Hi, my name is Lukulevich, and I will walk you through the implementation of GTM with UserEngage for extracting data from a form on a single page and using GTM sending this data to UserEngage. So let's start with the basic idea and the form that I have. So on this page, there's only this form. It has 6 fields. It's name, email, country, message, gender, and sign up for newsletter. And I want to send those fields as user attributes and as event to UserEngage using GTM. So what's the plan? How is it going to work? So the first thing is that I'll create a tag that will be automatically activated when someone visits this page. And in this tag, basically what I'll say is, keep listening and keep checking if this form is being submitted. And if it is, then take value of each field and put it in the data layer. Once that is done, then activate a special GTM event called form submission. And this is it. That's what this tag will do. So when someone comes to the page, it will be activated when I then fill out the form saying I'm Lech, Lech, userengage.com, from Poland, and or I can say I'm from Germany, and the message is hello. I want to sign up for a newsletter. I'll do command and click so that I'm still on this page. So what I want to happen is I want to get this data into my user profile in UserEngage. So the next thing I'm going to do after creating this first tag is I will create GTM variables, and each field will have a separate GTM variable. And this variable will store data that will import from the data layer. All right. So when I submit, data goes to the data layer, and from data layer, it goes to GTM variable. What happens next is that this event that I mentioned, this form submission event, will trigger UserEngage custom HTML tag. And this UserEngage GTM tag will simply send the data to UserEngage and send the event to UserEngage. So this is it. This is pretty simple. I mean, it might seem a bit complicated, but when we go through the whole thing, I'm sure it will be clear for you. I'm not a developer, so I'll try to explain everything as simply as it is possible. All right, thank you very much. Last part of the process is creating the tag that will send the user data to the user profile, not as an event. So we want to say, okay, so this user's name and email is this and that. So here I have this code. This is basically just this. And where did I take it from? When you go to userengage.com and go to integrations, JavaScript, what do you see? JavaScript. Then there's this method, UserEngage page here. You just copy it and change the content of those fields. As you can see, I put here the name and the email. And I trigger it with this form submission event. So when I now refresh this page, put my data here again. So, send. Let's see my user profile. I have some dummy data here because I just tried it before. As you can see, a few seconds ago, the event has been triggered, so it worked fine. And I will now refresh the page and see what happens. As you can see, my data has been uploaded right here. So this is it. This is the whole process. We can review it once again from the beginning. I firstly create a tag, including all those attributes on the page view. Then I have created the variables for each field of the form. You can see them here. Then I created the trigger the form submission trigger based on the code that has been uploaded into the page. And the last thing is that I used two different tags for sending the data to user engage. So thank you very much, and I hope everything is clear. If you have any questions, you can send me an email on userengage.com, life@userengage.com, or just ask for support. Thank you very much. Okay, I've created the rest of the variables. Let's see if they work. I go refresh and refresh the page. Let's see the data. Variables. Okay, gender works, message works, name works, newsletter works, email works, country works. All right, so it seems just fine. So now the next thing is that I will have to create a GTM trigger, which will be based on the event that is triggered by the basic tag. So it's a custom event. The event name is, let's see, it's here, form submission. Form submission. And if you want, you can make some rules around it. So for example, I can go only if email contains this, only then I will trigger it. In our case, this is not necessary because this form by itself has this kind of limitations. But if you want, you can create those kind of rules. Right, save it. And now I will have to create the next tag, the tag that will trigger, for example, sending the event to user engage. Now we have everything ready. So I go events, just so that you can see the basic code. Yes. Okay, now here is the basic code for triggering an event. I only need this part. To the moment part. Here I do new tag. Oh, sorry, it's actually new tags. Create a new tag and call it engage event form. Oh, sorry, I'm still in. Finish the tag and it does something like this. So I can call it form submission and name equals name. And those curly braces, they mean it's a GTM variable. And I want to trigger this event on form submission, because when the form submission triggers, it means that the data is already in the variables. All right, so save it, and let's hope that it works. Refresh. Because as you could see, let's see when this page loads. Yeah, the user engage is already implemented here. So let's find this user that I'm currently. Okay, I think it's this one. Yeah, so I think it's this one. I can go here and, all right, let's paste some data here. Again, in this event, in this particular event, I only put the value from the name attribute, so we don't have to worry about the remaining fields. Let's see what happens. As you can see, the event form submission tag has been fired, and it contains the attribute name equal to value left. So when I go to user engage, as you can see, the value is here, and left is the field from the form. So this works perfectly. I can, of course, put other attributes in here, but I think you get the basic idea how you can do it yourself. Basically, you just put comma and other fields. So for example, email. That's it. And the second attribute will be sent to user engage. So we're almost done. The only thing is that this tag only sends data about the event of the user, but not the attribute of the user. And we'll try to do that in the next. So I have activated my tag. I had a really small typo inside, but I corrected it already, so in the documentation it's all right. So I go back to my page and let's see what happens. I have activated the preview mode in my GTM. So here I can see exactly what is happening. So I fill it out. I go lech at userengage.com. I go Germany. Hello. Mail. For newsletter, yes. And I go command and click so that I keep having this page opened. And let's see the data layer, what happens in the data layer. As you can see, the data layer has received the name, email, message, country, newsletter, gender, and the event data. So everything seems to work fine in the data layer. Now, I need to take the data from the data layer and put them as a variable. So I go to variables, I create a new variable, I'll call it name, and use the data layer variable. The data layer variable is name because our code here, this value, name. It's name, and this is it. I just save it. I'll refresh the GTM, and I refresh the page. Now I'll only focus on this variable now because that's what we have just created. I do the same thing, and let's see. The rest of the elements had the either no value or the default value, but as you can see, the name is here. But when I go to variables, as you can see, this is the variable I have just created, just the last second. It's a data layer variable, and it contains the variable length. All right, that's perfect. So now I'll just finish the video right now, but I'll do the same thing for the rest of the variables, of course. All right, thank you. Let's move on to the first part, to creating this GTM tag that will listen to the form and activate once it's being submitted. So here's the basic template of this tag. Here's what it happens. It goes something like this. Okay, so there is this form with this CSS selector. So I want you to keep listening to it. And when something happens to it, when it's being submitted, then take the value of the field text, create a variable called text and put the value of the field with this CSS selector inside. And then create the same for dropdown, checkbox, and radio button. It's like it assumes that there are 4 fields in this form, because those are just examples. And what's important here is that they're separately because each of those types needs a different kind of code to extract the value of this field. So text needs this, dropdown needs this, checkbox, and so on. So the next step is that I want to put the values from those fields into the data layer, and this happens here. So the data layer variable text will include the content of this variable text. Dropdown, checkbox, radio button. So I basically said, put those values into the data layer. And the last part is, once that is done, send a data layer event called form submission with attribute form type equal to contact us and form submission equal to footer, and send this event to the GTM. So now let's use this template to create our own tag based on our example, which is here. So the first thing is the field, the CSS selector of the entire form, right? We have to put it here. So how do I check it? I simply go here, I go double click and inspect. I find the element that is that underlines the whole form. It's this one, form method post action ID my form. I go copy selector, and I'll paste it here just so that you can see it. So the CSS selector is #myForm. All right, that's pretty simple. And you can do exactly the same on your form, and you'll get a different CSS selector. It's unique for this field. So you might have something that is like 100 characters long or 1,000 characters long. It might be really long, seriously. So, but don't worry about it. So this is my CSS selector of the form. So here's I already translated it, and I put it here. So it's my form. And now let's map all the fields. So the first field is name. And if I do the same thing here, so I go inspect and I can see input type text. Okay, I go copy selector. I paste it here. It's #name. And that's why it's name here. And the same happens with email, message, country, newsletter. It's a bit different with radio button because I have one radio button. It's called gender. So what happens here is that there is no CSS selector of the entire like field. So all I have to do is find the name of this element, and the name is gender. So when I go here, as you can see, it's type radio and name gender. So this is the variable I needed, and I found it. And now I do, this is pretty simple. I just map those attributes on the data layer. So I go name, email. I can do it exactly the same. Then I push the data to the data layer, and the last element is I push the event to the data layer. So I just changed the form position full page. And why do you need those two attributes? Like you could go with this one alone, but it's advisable to use those because you might have, for example, 3 different forms on the same page. And you might want to make it very structured so that it doesn't have any, everything is clear. So if I have a different one in the footer, I will put the value of this field as footer, or maybe I can change the form type. So this is not something you absolutely need, but it's good to have it just to keep it clean. All right, so I have this code, and I just copy it. I go to GTM, my GTM tag. Okay, so first I have to create this the trigger. It will be page visited, and the trigger will be page view. Which page view? I can select a certain one. So for example, page URL must contain, what was it? All right, this. So I can do it like this. All right, save it. Now I go to tags and I create this tag. I can call it form. Okay, so it will contain a custom HTML code. And now all I have to do is copy this code here. I hope that I did not make any stupid mistake, any like a typo, and it will all work fine. But if anything's wrong in the next video, I'll just tell you what to correct. And in the trigger, I go page visitor. So what this says is when some page includes basically this, then trigger this custom HTML code. I do save. And part 1 is ready. Of course, I need to have this GTM implemented on my page, but it's already done, so you don't have to worry about it in this case. Okay, so this is part 1. So I think this is enough for this video, and next video I'll show you how to create the variables and event trigger for this tag. All right, thank you.